Burchard. Bret, welcome. Chris, welcome. Guys, we've been trying to figure out what the hell we're going to talk about today. And it finally dawned on me. Why don't we talk about this idea of how the hell I get my kids to join me on a hike outside? It's like, it's, it's interesting, man. It's like we are so like bombarded by just a barrage of crappy news, and it just gets worse and worse. And it's getting harder and harder to find, that joy that we can create ourselves. And my big idea is just creating a new environment for us so that we can just get the hell out of Dodge and find something interesting to grab our attention.
Yeah.
So lots of questions. So were they like feeling cabin fever from COVID stuff? And you're like, okay, I need to get us kind of out of here and doing something.
No, that's me.
So they're fine, but like they're on their devices a lot and you want to get them a pattern interrupt. Yeah,
exactly.
I'll fill in gaps and then you just tell me if I'm wrong. So then you're trying to get them to go hiking and they don't want to because it's cold, it's cloudy.
Got to get dressed, got to get in the car.
Yeah.
I did mention, there's no Starbucks before or after.
Yeah. So did you get them to go?
We're still in process. The ideas
negotiations.
The idea exploded.
When did you start trying?
Yesterday. So yesterday did not happen.
Sales expert James Royce. Can he sell his kids to go hiking? That's honestly, I've had an easier time convincing people of a world that doesn't yet exist than engaging my kids sometimes on something I'd like for them to do with me. So I get it. So if you were to go hiking, where would you go? For those in Columbus, Ohio, it don't matter anywhere.
Yeah, there's lots of gorgeous state parks around, and we just find a place that's rural so we can make sure we've been someplace that we go someplace we haven't been before. We're not going to be bumping into too many folks, so we can keep the masks off and stuff like that.
Yeah, man. Dude, I think that like you look at the cell phone data, I forget how many people aren't staying home. But some are. So it's weird. It's a weird world to live in right now. Things are crazy. And I'm just like, this is just the beginning of the winter. And it's not like the vaccine's going to fix everything.
Right.
Freaking, I'm using too many words that are going to get this kicked off any kind of social media.
Well, I'll tell you what my wife and I wrote a
poem to each other about your love.
We wrote a newsletter article today to open our newsletter. Called the newsletter is called Walking the Talk, and it's kind of a challenge to us to kind of bring out to our clients and subscribers, the things that we're struggling with, or the things that we've decided to do, or the things that we've learned. And I think big part of the message is relates to what you just talked about, Chris, is this idea that 8 months, lots of opportunities for clarity and action, and how 2021, we're not looking forward to it changing or getting easier. We're looking forward to kind of leveraging the hardening that we've gone through to continue to take on whatever comes our way. So we're kind of looking forward to the test continuing versus getting easier as our approach to, as you talk about, what's coming in front of us. And it's only going to get more challenging as far as we can tell.
Yes. And I don't want to be doomsdayish, but I'd like to hear how both of you think it'll get more challenging. And after you do that, I want to come back to just this idea of the narrative of your brain and how you can shape it to show up a certain way. It's a thought I've been having lately. But yeah, Bret, curious, in what ways do you think it'll get worse? Jimmy, in what ways do you think it'll get worse?
Well, from the beginning of the whole pandemic, when everything shut down and, those original lockdowns, I thought at the time, I was like, really exciting because in a weird way, exciting because this is going to break some stuff, and we're going to have to upgrade and change. And, some systems or institutions that were in place that need to be broken are now like, this is the interrupt that we were looking for to really make some substantial upgrades or changes to systems and institutions that were just, not working anymore. But I think what hit me in the last week or so was to make that substantial of a change. I think sometimes, all right, we'll lock down, we'll weather the storm, and then we'll get back to normal, and then we all kept talking about the new normal, but none of that stuff happens quickly. Like if it would happen in 3 months, we'd all right, we weather a storm for 3 months and then we get back to normal and we keep rolling right along. But if we're really going to have substantial change, if these institution systems are really going to be changed and upgraded, like it's going to be a long, painful breaking process. Like I think we all have the mental toughness to like hold on for long enough, back up, or to let go for a second and then reclaim what we just lost. But to like really let go and let it go and turn and force and find a new direction. It takes some time and takes some like really deep pain. And so, yeah, I think things like, I think in my mind, I had this thought that, maybe it will happen quicker, but it doesn't. And it's gonna take some time. So I don't know specifically how it's gonna get worse, but we're gonna have to go through some painful times still before we ever get to the other side of the change.
Yeah, to the degree there's a reality that is rigid and pervasive, the learned patterns, systems, behaviors of that, then the unlearning is the equal. It's almost like there's an unlearning and a dismantling. It can happen fast, for sure, but usually not. It's usually more drawn out, more painful. The path you walked in is the path you got to walk back out on stuff. And yeah, there's a lot there that I want to comment on, and accepting reality and brains. Curious, Jimmy, what you think is going to be worse. And hold on, folks, because we'll talk about where it's going to get better. But you can't get to the better without an honest assessment of what's bad.
Right. Well, it's really heartening just because I've been working with my clients, virtually, and my family full time, and my kids, one a sophomore in college, sophomore in high school, doing it both virtually and kind of dealing with the challenges close to home and the challenges outside of the house. And it really, for me, it comes down to a simple thing, right? Whenever I'm fielding a sales team or hiring a salesperson, or whenever I take on the task of training a team, I want to know the goal, and because I want to know what the rules are, right? How am I going to be evaluated so I can set my plan to be successful? It's like I use the analogy all the time. It's like being in a beauty contest and not knowing, right, what events are coming up and what things you should be good at or not good at to win that decision. So for me, it's really simple. It's how are the rules going to change? How have they changed? And pay attention to that. It's not a matter of what you want to be true. It's not a matter of what the politicians say is true. It's a matter of deciding for yourself, how have the rules changed? And what rules are you going to prepare yourself to deliver to? And that's going to determine your success or failure. And what's wonderful about that is, the decision to identify those rules, especially when the rules aren't given to you, fosters a level of leadership that is really addictive. It's invigorating. It's thrilling. It's exciting, and it's something you want to get better at. And it's a discipline that you can get better at. And so by embracing that challenge, determining what the rules are going to be, and then preparing for those rules, you can take the lead, right? And take control of your own development and growth, and not wait for the people around you to tell you what you should think about, not wait for leadership to come from somewhere else.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, and that's the moment. If I shrunk it all down, the moment that's happening for everyone, the gift, building on what you just said, Jimmy, is to have my wording, have a non-reactive identity. Have an identity that you internally construct, whether your persuasion is that self is an illusion, and consciousness is just the experience of that self, or you're of the persuasion or tradition that there is a congruent self to be known beyond the pressure of the ego. Wherever you find yourself on that, this is the moment. Like 2021 is going to show you how you construct a narrative, and what disappoints you and what excites you. And for me, I think it's fascinating to think about how you can train your brain on really anything. To like, if you're a comedian, you're training your brain to focus on all the funny stuff with what's happening right now. Do you still get sad and disheartened by things? Of course, right? But you look at like how Saturday Night Live can take what's happening, and exploit out, not in a negative way, but extract out, I should say, all the humor and how much fun it is. Like, it's hilarious. And they'll do both sides, of course, but right now it's mostly, one side. And I mean, right now you could be obsessed with mating patterns of butterflies. Like I could come to today's hangout time with you guys and be like, oh, what's the date? It's November 24th. This is the week that such and such butterfly goes from, Texas to Guatemala. That would be crazy, but maybe they do. So, you have this world that you construct. And I don't think people realize like how powerful that is to understand right now. Because here's what I'm saying. For those that would listen to this, if you construct a mindset that says, I don't want people to suffer. Of course, I don't want to suffer. But in all suffering and struggle, there is opportunity. And when things are falling apart, when there's a suffer, when there's suffering, when there's a struggle, that's an opportunity. What's the opportunity? To grow and learn. To use the example you're using, to learn the rules of the game. Now, that brings up something I think is actually going to be very challenging. I don't think we know what the rules of the game are. What I mean by that is this. Let's use an example of how provocative do we want to be in this episode?
Why hold back, man?
Okay. So here's the thing. Where I live personally is that wisdom is often a tension fleshed out in two extremes. So I'm thankful for the world we live in and the space that we're making for the percentage of children that are born and experience a different psychological sex than their biological sex. Okay. But for the percentage that experience that, we're having a higher number, go through this process of thinking that's what's true about them. And what you've got, like somebody like J.K. Rowling, who would be progressive, saying, no, don't do that too soon. Don't take medicine or do surgeries too soon, because that's a process working itself out. And then she's canceled by like extreme, on the extreme ideological end of that. So a perfect example of this, there's a book that was written, I forget who wrote it, that was like, hey, we just need to be careful about this. And some people complained on Twitter, so Target took it off, complained at Target. So Target took it off their book sales. Then other people complained, and they put it back on. So it used to be that when you think about larger companies, whatever the progressive liberal stance is where it's headed. And that's where you want to be, and that's what's going and developing. And that's exciting. That's the advancement of humanity. Hey, you're not worth 3/4 of a person or 3/5 of a person. You're a whole person, right? As we've gotten beyond so many racist ideas. But there's obviously still systemic racism. But how is the world helped by me feeling bad that I'm a white male and punishing myself for that, right? So we have this whole cocktail cauldron of swirling outrage and anger and you see people trying to find a pathway to grift for themselves through it. And I think that means a lot of leaders are afraid. They're focused on growing their companies, but sometimes growing your company means you've got to make a change on the team. Sometimes you got a team member who's toxic, who's holding things back. So sometimes you got a team member who's not activated, who's not growing as much as they can. And you get what I'm saying, all the implications of this. Do we need to delete this and go on live right now? Does that bring up, things for you guys that's concerning, or?
Jimmy?
Well, I mean, in the world of sales that I occupy and that my clients occupy, what is required is differentiation. And when you're belly to belly with someone or on the phone, it is a dynamic environment.
like that skill, that ability is needed more now than ever.
Because lots of people are laying landmines, and the way most people are going to approach this is fearfully avoiding landmines, or being a part of the problem and laying landmines. And there is a way. We'll find a better analogy, that you just burrow a tunnel into the ground and pop up on the other side. Because that landmine field doesn't last forever. I don't mean time. I mean, because it could go on for a while. I mean, spatially, its impact, its reach. You can, outlead that.
Right. I guess the question too for me is, are they always landmines, right? I mean, landmine kind of gives me the sense that it's a life or death, all or nothing kind of decision. I mean, there are a lot of those out there, but for leaders and in most of our lives, the things that helps me, recognize that I don't have to be perfect in my decisions, is that as long as I, decision that I make, as long as it's something, as long as I can walk away from the mistake, then it's something I can learn from. And so that's also an enriching kind of a feeling. You don't have to be perfect. And that's one of the first lessons that I gave my kids. And it's one of the first lessons that I reinforce with the teams that I help to build. Take the risk, but just make sure that you make mistakes you can walk away from. And it was really a lesson that I was given by a CEO from a company that, a startup that I'd worked with, early 2000s. The CEO said to me, he said, "Jimmy, there's not a decision you can make that I can't fix. So go for it." And I've interpreted that over the years as that lesson. As long as you're making mistakes you can walk away from, that's cool. Because I know I'm not going to be there when my kids make the most important decisions in their lives. So maybe this lesson can be there. Same thing with the teams that we build.
The challenge for me in that, Jimmy, is like, which mistakes can I walk away from? Which mistakes are going to be the crusher, and, and I think you could, if we really like sit with it, think about it, like every mistake you're going to be able to recover from to some degree, right? What happens is you feel like in the moment, this mistake is unrecoverable. Like if I lose this job, I'll never find another job again.
Right.
And then I'll be on the street, home, whatever. I was just thinking about this crazy, like, because I've been going through this space in the last few months where I've done more experimentation than ever in my life, and like really developing a mindset to try new things, to put it out there, see if it works, and until I publish it or put it out or share it, I'll never know. And so getting more risky and vulnerable with that, and probably more now than ever in my life before. And I was thinking about it on my walk this morning, but we do a lot of experimentation. My wife is experimenting with making homemade pumpkin pies and different stuff for Thanksgiving. And we made a pie and it didn't. It was delicious. It was delicious. I ate it all, but like we're experimenting, right? And
you put it in front of me.
And like we experiment 100. Think of this. I bought a carton of 12 eggs. We've been buying 12 eggs. Why didn't we buy the 18? We eat a ton of eggs. Or why didn't we buy the 30? We ate a ton of, like, we're always experimenting. And these things don't matter. They have no impact, right? And so it feels safe to experiment. And so where's the threshold? All of a sudden now I'm going to experiment by publishing a book or a podcast, or I'm going to experiment by kids on a hike. I'm experiment by putting in new rules about their cell phone use, whatever. Like,
right.
But we always get to a point where the experimentation feels like this is going to be the end of me. Well, I guess finding, like, navigating where's that threshold, where's that mental toughness to say, like, this won't be the end of me. I can keep going.
Exactly. I think, Bret, that's the beauty of it. So in my mind, you take your kid hiking, right? The mistake would be not to bring adequate safety equipment or to prepare properly, right? You don't want to be stuck out in the wilderness for days on end and die of starvation or exposure, right? So what's really interesting to me is that it kind of forces you to think about, so what? So what if I do this? What's the impact? And it's important that, to help us think about the realistic or likely consequences, and then what could they mean? Because after all, that's the stuff that helps us decide whether or not the cost benefit analysis makes sense. So I think for hiking, it's that way. For driving a car, do I speed or don't I? Can you live with the consequences of killing the people in your car or someone that you hit because you lose control? Those are wonderful kind of challenges to deal with. The idea of losing a job, making a decision and saying, I can survive that. Wow, what a freeing decision. Or saying I can't, but I will. And then developing, your bank account with all your fuck you money, pardon my French. You didn't know that was French, did you, Bret? But, create that account. It just says, yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm going to live my life. And here's the cushion that's going to allow me to survive maybe something that does cost me. And then what ends up happening? It never does, because you build that competency that allows you to overcome those kinds of challenges.
Well, and for me, I think for 99% of the situations you face, everything you guys are saying is true. But I do think there are those situations that, and I'm going to back out from this and go back into it. I'll say it, back out, go back in. That can totally impact the trajectory in a downward negative way. And we've seen that happen in society where people get canceled, right? I could use cancel culture, or, I use a thing in a course called Figure That Game Out that we haven't made public, but it uses something from Neil Gaiman's work, which was a brilliant statement that he made in one of his comic books. There are 4 fatal flaws. So there are mistakes. One of them is a lack of imagination. For East Germany, it was a fatal flaw for most of the people that lived in that country for their lifetime to not anticipate what was going to happen with German nationalism. That's the thing. If you're in a position of leadership, you have to imagine the potential for evil and things going wrong, like you're talking about with the hike. But this is a level above that, right? In the intensity of the example. One of them is to, fail to take an opposite shape from the one you're in. So if you're really an opposing force, how do you absorb what's happening? Mm-hmm. So I could walk through these, but the point of this is, I do think right now, as society shakes things out and works through its stuff, because clearly it is, and it's doing this like crazy, it's going to do that longer. There are a lot of leaders that are public facing in their roles that feel like they're walking through a minefield with changes that are that need to be made, but have all this potential for blowback. And to that, I'm going to back out of it and say, we teach something in the speaking coaching. There's never a wrong note. You can't play a wrong note. You can say the worst thing from stage. And this is what keeps us from getting into a flow state in speaking. You can say the absolute worst thing. And a professional or a master musician, they don't just try to play the right notes like a pro. They know they can take a wrong note and flip the energy of it around to make it a part of it. And I've done that. I mean, I have been in a public speaking place where I'm in a flow state and I say something terrible. And then I have to holy crap.
Guilty.
Yes. So you can recover from it. But I do think all of this precipitates the need for this in my mind, to develop a resilient mental capacity so that within yourself, you are unshameable, and you're unstoppable in your mission and you're uncancelable in your community. Not in a psychopathic way that you don't care about others, but in a way that you're actually trying to actively build and make the world better. But no one else has power over you, you know?
Mhm.
You dig under the landmines. But I think a lot of people need to hear that over and over, because they're going to choose such reactive positions rather than have the boldness to imagine the vision of what it needs to be.
Well, so it sounds like, and this is something Bret has commented on before, but I'd love to hear you kind of expand on this. But it sounds like the decision is, open yourself up to mistakes because you want to get into that flow state, or don't, become a victim of the indecision and the fear and this need to be perfect or whatever, or not to be wrong, and miss the opportunity to experience that flow state, and operate the edge of your potential and all that. Is that what we're talking about, Chris? I mean, is that the choice that we have to make?
Yeah, Bret, it looks like you're.
Yeah, it just reminded me, my college coach. I remember my senior year. I was wanting it to be so good. We put a lot of emphasis on seniors and ownership of the program. And it was my last year playing college basketball, and I wanted it to be so good. And we got off to a rocky start. I was trying so hard to do it right. And I remember my college coach saying, this thing is like running down a hallway with doors on each side, all the way down the hall. And you got to run down that hall as fast as you can. And at some point, one of those doors is going to swing open and hit you in the face. Because at some point, it's going to end, right? The season's going to come to an end. But you have to run down that hall as fast as you can. You have to go for it. And you talk about navigating the landmines, like we could tiptoe around and try to navigate every landmine and not get hit. But to experience the flow state, the full experience of who we are, to lead with the courage that it takes to navigate through the crazy times right now, you got to go for it. You got to go. And you might hit a landmine, and hopefully you avoid the ones that are fatal, like you're talking about, Chris. But hopefully you also will just get tripped up on a couple that you can recover from, and there's no wrong note, and you can keep going. But that is like, you got to be, it's going to be vulnerable. You're going to take some steps that no one else has taken before. There's no roadmap. There's no blueprint towards it. But you try it and do the best you can and learn from it and keep growing.
It's awesome. Yeah. More courage.
Yeah.
More flow.
So Bret, what I love about that is it sounds like, right, the decision is to flow or not to flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this idea, what you just said though, is this idea of learning and lessons, right? So if we're thinking about how leaders can navigate 2021 and what, based on what's happened over the last 8 months, the question really is, what did you learn? What have you learned over the last 8 months? And I wonder, the more sedentary we are when change is occurring, the more kind of flaccid and just kind of like, willing to go with the flow, the less curious, the more complacent, then I would have to guess that the less we have to learn, right? But the more curious and the higher level of clarity, the more things you try, the more mistakes you make, the more you have a chance to learn, and the better your odds are moving forward.
Yeah, the more disorder there is, the more potential and opportunity that exists. This is why psychotic leaders, dangerous leaders, create disorder. They feed off of it because it's what allows them to destabilize so that they can be the stabilizing force. Healthy leaders boldly run into chaos to be a stabilizing force of order, to help others order themselves. And right now, most of what I see is two extremes of we'll tell you what order looks like.
And there's people waiting for the answer,
Mm-hmm.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And if you feel destabilized by these times, if you feel uncertain by these times, if you feel struggle because of these times, any of those are awesome clues and signals that this is your moment to expand and to become something you weren't. I'm not who I was 8 months ago. I feel like I was tolerating a diminishing return in 2019, and I would have optimized 2019 in 2020. But rather what's happened is reinvention. And the chaos created pain, and going into that chaos and into that pain and starting to create order there. And with all we've been talking about, like Bret was saying, with experiments, you're just experimenting like crazy to figure out, what are those things that help order this chaos. And I'd like to be in a place in life where it's like, at least 50-50. That's the symbiotic energy. I've had periods where it's like 80% order. That's nice, man. I'll take it. Let me roll with that for a while. But when you're in a moment like we're in, which is like 80% chaos, 20% order, that's when it gets exciting because that change can happen. Brain broken.
Right. But I think also when you think about what we're asking leaders to do, we're not asking leaders to go this alone. What we are, I think what we're saying is that as a leader, you have to decide what's important to you. You have to have a level of clarity to know what you want. And we refer to that as achieving clarity, that level of focus. But then the next thing is strategy. How do you get there? What's the plan? You don't need to go that alone. You don't need to depend just on your knowledge, your experience. I mean, that's the moment to go find people who you trust, who share your core values, to advise you, to provide you with counsel, to be that voice of reason, or to share a different perspective, not to move you to a point of inaction, but to empower you and to help you move forward with a level of confidence so that you can then take action. Clarity, strategy, action. But this is not something you have to do on your own.
And I love that you're emphasizing this, because that wise voice can help you avoid unnecessary, pains. And that just means you're going to get to a new pain quicker. I mean, I had a chat with a guy yesterday who has a plan on how he's going to do this thing over a few years. And I've been in that spot and I've built that plan. Exact same. And I'm like, dude, if you do that, these things are going to happen. You need to take that plan and do this. And, and it's rare that I would be that prescriptive, but it's a terrain I've walked so many times. And he immediately was like, okay. And then he made the shift, and now he's enacting a different plan. And all that's going to do is get him to a new learning faster. I saved him an unnecessary learning, but there'll still be another learning. It's just an unnecessary one because it never ends. Growth.
That's it. I keep thinking, like, if I'd share one message with people right now or going through this time, if you're just hanging onto the rope, hoping to survive until the end of it and then come out on the other side, your mental toughness, you're putting too much stress on your mental toughness. You won't survive doing it that way. Like, now is the time, and the decisions we make right now, the investments we make right now, the things we learn from what's going through right now is going to have ripple effects for years after, whenever this ends, quotations. Like, now's the time to lean into it, to grow, to dig deep, to feel the depth of the pain, and then out of that come out with the fullness of the solution and the growth and the next step.
Yeah.
This is the moment.
Outstanding. Thank you, guys. And we've come to the end of another episode. I think we should wrap it Well said. And I mean, inspiring, given all the things that we hear and all the kind of advice and ideas surrounding us and the confusion that it surrounds most people. Great insight, great guidance, great a great prescription, if you will, Chris, for how we can move forward as leaders and as leaders of our families, leaders of teams, etc. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Breaking Brains and Building Hearts. We look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, take good care. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe.
Happy